Okay. Hello, everybody. Once again, it is February the 10th, and this is MELS 601 clinical coach session. And I am Joe Bullis. I'm your clinical coach. I do appreciate all of you attending tonight, and we do have some people coming on board still. But for those of you who are watching the recording, I appreciate you coming in to view the recording. I just want to tell everybody I appreciate your understanding. Last class session, I was in no shape whatsoever to conduct class. It was all I could do to type that email. I think I started typing that email. It took me 30 minutes to get the email done to let you know that that recording is out there. So I tell you that stuff is crazy. But praise God. I am feeling good. I'm still getting a little bit of stamina back. I ran and lifted Monday and Tuesday and took last night off. So I could certainly tell that my stamina was a little bit low, but it's getting better. So I'm in good shape. I appreciate all the emails that you guys sent me too. Thank you. That was very sweet and kind of you all. So, all right, if you are online and if you can turn your cameras on, I always like looking the faces rather than names on black screen, but I do understand sometimes you may not feel like turning your camera on, or there may be a good reason you don't have your camera on, and been in that position too, so that is not a problem. So we will go ahead and start with tonight's session. If you have any questions about that recording was on task 1 and task 2, and kind of how you get into my Blackboard and upload your stuff. We're going to go over that again tonight. Make sure you don't have any questions on that. And then I plan on talking about task 3 and task 4 of the APSL. But before we get into all that, are there any questions anyone has on task 1 and 2? I have gotten a few of you have uploaded task 1 into my Blackboard shell, and I have given you some feedback on that. So does anybody have any questions maybe on some feedback that I might have given you, or in task 1 and task 2 in general before you upload? And we will talk about how to upload it into my Blackboard shell here in a minute, or review that. Any questions on task 1 or 2?
Yeah, I have a question.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, how are you?
Great, thank you.
Good. Glad you're back on your feet.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So once you send us kind of what we need to revise once we submit it on your end of it, can we fix that as many times as possible, or is this kind of like a one-shot deal?
No, with me, we're gonna work on that until we get it to the point where it will be 100. That's why I don't, I know some people say, and even your course instructor says, go ahead and put it in the Dropbox and I'll grade you. Then we'll look at it again and I'll grade you again. I just kind of push all the grading to the side, and that's why I have you to post in the discussion board, and we will continue to revise that until you get it to 100. So when I tell you to upload it to the Dropbox for evaluation for grading, that means it's 100. And then I just plug 100 in. I've recorded the grade. I've got documentation that I recorded the grade, which justifies me to the university and giving you the final grade. I just need to show that I recorded that grade. But to answer your question, no, we'll revise that as many times as we need to. It's not a one-shot deal. Now, if it's like, close to the end of the semester, you only got so long, but I'm going to work with you and get it in good shape. Usually, it's anywhere from 1 to 3 revisions. Some people get it first bat and I say, hey, this looks great, there's no revisions needed, go ahead and put it in Dropbox. But I guess on average, maybe 2 revisions. I have worked with somebody 3 or 4 times to get it right, and sometimes it's just a matter of me understanding too where they're coming from and the dynamics of what they're working with. But yeah, it is not a one-shot deal. That's a great question. We'll work on it as many times as we need to get it to the level of 100, because when it leaves me, the whole document, I'm not going to let it leave my eyeballs until I know that if you were to put it in front of the evaluator, you would get at least a 3. Because if I let it go, if I know that it might be less than 3 and I tell you to get it evaluated anyway, well, they're just going to send it back to you and we're going to have to revise it then. So before it hits the evaluator's eyeballs, it's going to be a 3 or a 4. That's my guarantee.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Any other questions? That was a great question. Okay, well, if you think of something while we're something, I may say something that kind of prompts a question in your mind. If you think of that, let me know. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to bring up Blackboard. So we'll review that first, then we'll get into task 3 and task 4. I did want to say the task 1 from Apsel that I've been getting in my Blackboard have been great. Dr. Church, you've done a good job of listening. You've done a good job of learning what you need to do on your own. And then Dr. Church has done a good job of supporting you in the course. And then your peer reviews have done a good job. There's not been a lot of revision so far, just a few things. I will tell you some of the common things in your school profile. It's great. A lot of times I will say, well, take a look. You'll tell me the dynamics of the school, the demographics of the school, how it sits in the community. A lot of times I have to remind candidates to, well, tell me about the administrators. What's the administrative structure? Do you have a principal and 2 assistant principals, or just 1 principal? How many years of experience do they have? How does that kind of flow in the building? And also teacher experience. How many, how many teachers are in the building? What's their average experience? Years of experience? Do you have any national board certified teachers? That's really good information to know. And so a lot of times I'll say, you might want to go back and include that. The majority, and I'm sure we've already told you this, but the majority of information for the school profile you can find in if you're in North Carolina, the NC school report card will give you a lot of good information on the dynamics and demographics of your school. I know South Carolina has an equivalent to that. I just can't remember what it is, but a lot of times you can pull information off the school website. Mission, vision, value, that's always good information to add in the school profile. Another thing in task 1 is make sure that you document that you got permission from your principal. I look for that in the narrative. And if there's some artifact out there that shows that, whether it's an email between you and the principal or the notes that you had of a meeting, I always look for that as well, as to make sure that that's in there, to where it's documented in some form that you did get permission from your principal. Those are kind of the 2 things that I kind of deal with quite a bit. So go ahead and put that out there. And I meant to tell you this earlier. When we are doing a session and I record it, I've always recommended to my candidates, just kind of keep an eye on the time. If we start at 7 p.m. and I'm going through and I'm saying something and I say something that you want to be reminded of, or you want, oh man, I want to go back and listen to that again, or oh, what did he say about this? If I say something and you're trying to take notes or whatever, rather than missing something else that I said while you're taking notes, I always tell my candidates, just notate the time. If I say something at 7:09 that's real important, then when you can go back to the recording, fast forward it to 7:09, and then you can hear what I said. So that's an easy way. That way you don't have to watch the whole recording, or you don't have to scan the whole recording to hear 2 or 3 things that you wanted to go back and have a follow-up on. I always just say, just notate the time on the clock. If we start at 7, then, if I say something that you want to go back and review later, just see what time it is. Okay, I need to fast forward to 7:15, and that's easier for you than trying to take notes and stuff. So, all right. So to get into my Blackboard shell, and I think I did email one of you that was having difficulty. Just look, when you pull up, you're going to see several different courses. Mine, of course, is going to look different than yours. But in finding me, you'll see, I'm going to move these pictures over here just a second. Okay, move this screen. Okay, here we go. You may see several Blackboard shells that have the clinical internship. The one that you need to access for me is this one that has MELS clinical internship _Bullis. This one is not currently available, so you won't see that one, but you may see others like may say 697 or 695, MELS 697, 695. I don't use the ones that has any numbers. Mine will say this right here, MELS Clinical Internship Bulletin. When you click on that, a good way to know that this is mine is that it'll say MELS Clinical Internship Bulletin here, but you'll have the Absols here and the Dropbox here. I think the other ones that are out there, Gardner Webb clones the shells to rebuild them every semester, and for some reason they leave those clones sitting out there. I don't use them. I use this one, and I don't have user rights to take them off, and I've tried to get them to be taken off, but they don't want to because they want to save them on there so they can use them again. And I get it, understand that. Just make sure that you're on the MELS Clinical Internship shell. And mine, it's not as fancy as maybe Dr. Church's is, but it does contain a lot of the same information. Some of these things won't come up on your view because they're hidden, but under content, there's some information there. I think Dr. Church has the same thing, and you may have already reviewed that. Intern shell directions is on there. I'm going to tell you everything that's on here, so you don't really spend time that. If you want to know how to forward your Gardner Webb email to your school address, that's on there. That's a quick video for you. The templates and resources that we talked about, that's the same thing that's on Dr. Church's shell. This is going to be helping you out in task 3 of the APSL. It's this document here, comparing an annotated bibliography to a literature review. If you haven't already reviewed that before you do task 3, you may want to. Has some good information. It's what's the difference in a literature review and an annotated bibliography, which you will be doing an annotated bibliography in task 3. It's going to be a little bit different than the PLC research you did in task 1. So that's a good document to review. And here's the things that you've already seen before for all of the evidences that you'll be doing through the program. There's a template, there's some helpful hints. We'll talk about this next time. So the Competency Folio Exemplar. So that is under templates and resources. My Zoom meeting schedule that has the link in it to the Zoom session is there. And then the video library. Every time I do a recording, I will post the recording in the video library. And if you don't have anything to do and there's nothing on TV, no ball games or anything, and 90 Day Fiance is not on, or Judge Judy or whatever, and you want to watch some stuff, you can. I've got a lot of videos here from past semesters. If you want to watch them, you're welcome to. I don't know why you would want to. I leave them up there just for prosperities, I guess. But the one that you want to pay attention to is spring 2022. I do have 3 cohorts. I'm working with 602 and 605, but here's your cohort 601. And any video that I did, here is the recording that I posted for you guys last time. It's up here if you want to go back and rewatch it. The one we do tonight will be in here as well. That will be under video library. You already got your handbooks, but here's the supervisor handbook, internship handbook, the scale handbook, which is something I use extensively. We'll be working from that tonight as well. And then we have the APSL task for review and the APSL evaluation Dropbox. Happens every semester. It's okay if it does. It's not a big deal. And I see some of you smiling because you did it. But I'm not going to call any names. But it happens every semester. It is okay. The first place that you want to upload your task is for review, because we're reviewing it. We're not grading it yet. We're reviewing it. So you put all your tasks under APSL task for review. Whatever task you're working with, that's where you upload it, task 1 or 2. So this is where, as I was talking to Tyler about, this is where we'll review it. I'll give you feedback, you revise it, send it back to me again. I'll look at it again. I'll give you more feedback. You may need to revise it or may be ready to be graded. I will always tell you in my feedback what to do. If it's excellent and there's nothing that needs to be done, I will say, hey, this is great. Excellent work. No suggestions for improvement. Go ahead and upload for grading, or go ahead and upload to the APSL task evaluation Dropbox. I may say, hey, here's my feedback, blah, 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 blah. Once you make revisions, it may just be because it's so close, there's just a few little things you need to tweak. I'll say make your revisions and then go ahead and upload to the evaluation Dropbox for grading. Or I may say, read over my feedback, make the revisions, and then upload here again for final review before grading. So that's basically the three things that I tell you. Either go ahead and send it off to be graded, or make a few changes. You don't have to, I don't have to see it again. Just make the few changes that I suggested to you, send it off to grading, or here's some things I'd like for you to change, make those changes, send it back to me again to review. And once again, I said this to you before, and I'll probably say it a couple more times. At the end of the day, this is your professional document. You own this. You are the one creating this. My job is just to offer suggestions and make recommendations based on what I know the evaluator is looking for, based on what I know is in the rubric, and based on my experience in helping candidates. Doesn't mean I'm always right. Doesn't mean that I understand your particular situation explicitly to the point to where I know exactly this is what you do to make this paper work. If you don't ever agree with my feedback, that's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. It may be that I either misread something or missed something or misunderstood the dynamics of your particular situation. So if I ever make a suggestion to you and that doesn't feel right to you, or that changes what you wanted to get across, let me know. We'll talk about it. And that's happened several times. You know, I'll make a suggestion and the candidate will say, well, no, Dr. Bullis is just, or, you know, you don't have to call me Dr. Bullis, by the way. I've been Joe a whole lot longer than anything else. But they'll say, you know, well, Joe, this is kind of what I was thinking about. This is why I said that. And I will go, oh, you know what? That makes sense. Leave it, because I understand completely what you're talking about now. And I missed that previous paragraph where you kind of stated all that. So I just put that out there. It doesn't mean that I'm always right. It's a conversation that we have about your document to get it in the best shape that it's in. So once it's finished reviewing, once I feel like it's ready for 100 and ready to be graded, then I will say upload it to the evaluation Dropbox. And at that point in time, we're not reviewing it anymore. We're not making any more revisions. It is ready to be graded, and I will say evaluation Dropbox. You click on that and you upload it here, and then you'll get the grade of 100. Now, sometimes I miss something. I look over it again. I think I read each task, I don't know, depending on the revisions, at least 3 or 4 times. And I do a final read on it just to make sure that I haven't missed anything and you haven't missed anything. It is very rare, but sometimes I'll throw the grade back to be 95 and then in the comments and say, hey, you know what? Let's look at this again. Let's look at it one more time. That, like I said, that's rare, but that could happen. So the two sections that are, and just pay attention, they're separated by this line. The two sections here are task for review and evaluation Dropbox. And that stays the same all through the program. So when we're together for 602, 603, 604, this process will be the same. I stay with this. My 605 students do the same thing. So when we revise, the first thing we do is we upload it into tasks for review for revision. We do our feedback and revision process. When it's ready to be graded, then I will tell you to upload it to the evaluation Dropbox. Now, we're going to do that for each task individually. Task 1, task 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I like the task the sequential order. I don't want you to send me task 2 to review before I've seen task 1. I don't want you to send me task 2 while you're still making revisions on task 1. I want task 1 to be clear and graded before I take a look at task 2. The reason I do that is if you send me task 2 before you're revising task 1, some revisions you're making in task 1 may cause you to make revisions in task 2. So that's why I keep it step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. We don't ever skip those steps just for that reason, because I want to make sure that we got task 1 exactly the way we want it, and then you go from there to task 2. Now, can you work on tasks, you know, all at one time? You might be one of the, and you probably are one of these, you know, super genius multitasking people. You can work on several tasks at the same time. That is not a problem, but I want to be sure that we have task 1 clear and graded before we move to task 2 to make sure that the foundation that you're building doesn't change. So the foundation, task 2 is task 1. So task 1 needs to be settled before we start building on task 2, in my mind, for grading. Any questions on that?
My question is the template that we have, it has the space for the one, you know, the way you're supposed to upload it, then it goes directly to 2. So when I turn in 2 to you, should 1 be at the top of it? Am I just building on that document as I turn it into you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And used to, I used to have candidates to send it to me separate. And I'll be honest with you, or be frank with you. I'm always honest with you, but I'll be frank with you. The only reason I did that is because I was too lazy to scroll down. So because if you put in the template and you do task 1 and then task 2, at the time we get to task 4, I'm having to scroll all the way down to get to task 3. And I was too lazy to do that. And, you know, I guess God convicted me of that. And I thought it would probably be better on you if I didn't do that anymore. So when I realized that, I've made my apologies, and I have committed to you do it that way because it's easier for you. You just build on it. And so that way, when you get to the end, you just have that one document and you don't have to bring anything in. So
Okay,
yeah,
thank
that
you.
is fine. You're welcome. That's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up because I meant to say that. So yeah, by the time you get done, well, I probably would have said that because I'm getting ready to talk about the final evidence narrative. You send me task 1, we revise it, it's good to go, I grade it, move on to task 2. You send me task 2, we revise it, I grade it, move on to task 3. You keep it all in the template, that's fine, and we build on that template to where at the end of task 5, it is one complete document. One complete document with a title page, with one title page, one school profile, task 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then your reference page, and then your appendix that contains your artifacts. When you have it all completed like that to one document, that's what you upload to MELS 601 Absol Final Evidence Narrative. That is the complete document. And why I do that is because it gives me another opportunity. I mean, this is right before we get ready to send it off to the evaluator. It gives me another opportunity to look at it all at one time, just that final look to make sure that I feel good about it before you send it off to evaluation. Because once you send it off to evaluation, and if we catch something later, it's too late. We have to wait till it gets evaluated and they send it back to us before we can make any revisions we need. And I will let you know when that is. I will always tell you, you know, task 1 is good and it's graded. That means you move on to task 3. But at the end of task 5, I will tell you everything is good to go and graded. Please submit to the MELS 601 Absol Final Evidence Narrative. That means the whole document's going to be reviewed in one big swoop. When I'm looking at it, I only look at the section that we're reviewing or grading at that time. But on the final evidence narrative, that's when I go through all of it. Any questions on that piece?
I got a question.
Yeah.
It's more specifically about like the Absols building on themselves. So like once we finish our task 1 and it has, you know, our reference page and an appendix page after that, should task 2 like be after our reference page for the first task? So we should have a different appendix and reference for each, like.
No, that's a great question, Tyler. No, because that is a lot of work. You can just add to your reference page and move it on down because you're going to be adding references to your page, one title page, one school profile, task 1, and the reference page. And the reason to do that is because I always look to make sure that the references that you or the citations you have in your narrative match your references. And then when you go to task 2, and I'm fine with whatever's best with you. If you want to have a reference at the end of each task, and not every task will have a reference, you won't be citing research after each task. You will for the majority of them though. If you want to have a reference page after each task, and then by the time you get to task 5, before you submit it to the final evidence narrative, pull all that referenced again and put it at the very bottom, I'm okay with that. If you want to keep a running reference page and just keep moving it down below the particular task that you're working on, I'm fine with that too. So whatever's best for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And listen, I meant to tell you, if you ever do upload to the Dropbox in the wrong sequence or the order, you'll get a 0 because once you put it in Dropbox, I have to give it a grade, but that doesn't stay a 0. I just tell you, hey, we need to go back and do this. Let's revise it. And then when you resubmit it at the appropriate time, that 0 will turn to 100. I meant to say that, so no worries on that. All right, any question on submitting tasks to me for review and grading? Because what I sign off on is this evidence and getting it ready to go into task sheet. You'll get a grade from the clinical internship from me, just like you do from the course, Dr. Church. And that's why I have to collect grades. But before I collect that grade, I want to make sure it's 100. And so that way I'll have a documentation of giving you the grade that you get that you earn at the end of the semester. But this is the process that I use to make sure that your tasks are in good shape and then we get you ready to be evaluated. Any question on that process? And we'll move into task 3 and 4. And I will leave, if any questions don't get answered or you think of something, there'll be some Q&A time at the end of tonight's session. So we'll be happy to answer anything dealing with the program. Even if you want to know the weather, I'll look it up and tell you. I'm here to answer questions, okay? Don't know any lotto picks or anything like that. I wish I did, but yeah, I can't help you with that. All right. Are we good on how to submit stuff to me for revision and grade? Okay, groovy. Let's look then at my favorite piece of resource for MELS candidates, and that's the old MELS scale handbook. This, well, and when I say that, I guess you guys need to see it too. Me just looking at it and talking about it's probably not a good thing unless you can see it too. Here we go. This is the old MELS scale handbook. You scroll up, it's this document here. It's got 2021 copyright. That's the one that I referred to. I love this thing because it's just I don't know, it just contains all the information in one spot for me. And so I always, whenever I review for giving feedback or review for grading, I always judge the document against the rubric in this handbook because this is the same rubric that the evaluator uses. Now, you know, some clinical coaches go off the syllabus, go off the helpful hints documents, or go off the templates. That's great. They do their thing. I do mine. I always go back to the scale handbook in teaching and also in reviewing for revision. So we're talking about, and don't pay attention to, well, this is the add-on in the master's. You guys are considered the master's class. If you have a master and you're adding on, then you would be the add-on. So don't let that mess you up. So let's go to ABSL, task 3. And okay, so task 1 was about doing research on PLCs, getting permission to have a PLC, forming your PLC, picking your team, recognizing their strengths. And I want to say this too, you know, qualifications of somebody that somebody has, the experience that somebody has, and the strengths that somebody has can be 3 different things. Your experience, your qualification, and your strengths can be 3 different things. Qualifications is great. That tells me what you're qualified to do. Experience is great. That tells me you've been doing it a long time. But when you're talking about your team members, I want to know what their strengths are. What do they bring to the table? Part of being a leader, part of being a great leader, and this is Joe's opinion, but part of being a great leader is recognizing the leadership potential in others. So part of being a principal is recognizing not necessarily what somebody's resume says as far as what they're qualified to do, not necessarily finding out how long they've been doing it, but what are they good at? Maybe different. Their qualifications and the experience they may do and that may not, their strength may not have anything to do with either two of those other 2 categories. What are they good at? What can they do? Are they good at delegation? Are they good at taking notes? Are they good at motivating the team? Or are they good at solving problems? Are they good at recognizing problems? That may not come across in qualifications or experience. So you got to recognize what can they bring to the table that the team needs. And so that's why I'll tell you in your PLC selection sometimes, great, you listed the qualifications, you listed the experience, but what are the strengths of this person? What can they do to help the team out? And getting good at that as a principal, and that does take some time, be getting good at that at the school level administrator and even the central office level administration will make you really make your day a whole lot better, because you'll have the right people in the right place to do the job. Just like I just hired a new employee in my office, and when I did the interviews and had the interview team, I purposely hired the person that came across as fitting the niches where we needed those niches filled. To complement some areas we were weak, I was looking for somebody that had strength in those areas. And that's why this person got hired, because they had that strength. They were a great communicator, had, high energy and a good sense of humor. And we needed that on our team. We needed to beef up our team in those areas. And that's why I hired that person. I'm not saying I'm a great administrator. I'm still working on that. But I'm saying that's why I'm telling you, not necessarily list the qualifications of the people you select or the experience, but what strengths do they have? So I'll get off that soapbox. All right, so then we moved into the task 2. Task 2 is about pulling the team together and doing that academic needs assessment. The first meeting you have is all about establishing norms and protocols, judging the competency level of your team on professional learning communities. What do they think it is? How do they feel about it? What do they see? How they see the interacting? Maybe setting some responsibilities of the team and establishing the purpose. Not anything to do with looking at the need of the school yet. You say that for the next meeting, or after you accomplish that in the first meeting, then you can move on to it in that meeting into task 2, but you don't talk about it into task 2. In task 2, you do all the research, and let the research tell you what the need is. You might have a good idea, but let the research tell you what the need is, and you establish the need. 2's about forming the, 1's about forming the team, 2's about establishing the need, and that takes us to 3. Any questions on 1 and 2? Just let me put that out there again before we move on. Okay, and task 3. In task 2, you determine what the problem was. What's the need? What's the gap that needs to be addressed? Task 3 is all about researching the possible solutions to that problem. You established your need in task 2. Task 3 is what solutions are out there that can help your school or your team address that need. Now, these are recognized best practices, research-based, evidence-based. Who out there has had the same problem or identified the same need that your team has identified, and what did they do about it? Doesn't mean it'll definitely work at your school. Each school's different, each population's different. But what did they do? And that's what you do, is you go out and research those best practices, creating a review and an annotated bibliography. Remember, that document is in my Blackboard shell and in Dr. Church's shell too, about the difference between an annotated bibliography and a literature review. So make sure you read about that before you write that. But you're going to go out and find those best practices, and then once you find out all the best practices, you're going to pull your team together and you're going to have a conversation about each of these best practices, and you guys are going to determine which of these best practices will help us address or have an impact on the need that we have identified. May not be a positive impact, might be a negative impact. If it is, that's okay. If you try something and it doesn't work, then you know that best practice doesn't work. Then you move on to plan B. So you're looking for, but you're wanting to find something that, based on what others have done and what research says, this best practice or best practices will have a positive impact on the need that we identify. And you and your team have that conversation with you leading the conversation. As I read through all of your tasks and the interactions that you have with your team, I'm always looking to see if I can find evidence of your leadership, how you led the discussion, how you facilitated the conversation, how you helped bring consensus to a solution, how you helped resolve any conflicts. And what I mean by conflicts is, not a fist fight, but, just maybe a disagreement, or some people wonder, well, which direction do we need to go? Which best practices would be best? You bring consensus, you help resolve that conflict, you guide them to that solution. And I always look for that. Anytime you write about your interactions with your team, Don't be afraid to brag on yourself and the lead that you took in the conversation. And that's task 3. Now we're going to go down here and look at the prompt. Task 3, prompt 1 is looking and researching the best practices that you feel will have a positive impact on the identified need. And you know that because others have faced this same need, and this is what they say will address it. Now, and it does have, featuring, you always want to be looking for technology. And I think in the helpful hints, it talks about, ad minimum, accelerated reader, some of those technology-based programs that'll help identify that need. You want to be on the lookout for that as well, because a part of this is staying current with current trends. Doesn't have to have it, but you want to research those as well. So that's going to be the first part of task 3, is the literature review and the annotated bibliography about all the best practices out there. The second part is when you get with your team and you guys research that, determining what's best for you. And part of that is going to be visuals, charts, graphs, tables, timelines, embedded in the narrative about how your team thinks this will have impact. Now, if you're looking at a program, a lot of times the program will have that for you. If you're looking at a study island, they're going to throw up graphs and charts up there, how it's had an impact on other students and how it's great. If you do any kind of research, there's always going to be charts and graphs that shows you the effect that this program or variable had on outcome. You put those in there, and then you and your team discuss of that. Okay, this worked for them, and this is what they're showing. How do we see that having an impact on our population? So you're putting those graphic and visuals up there, and you and your team are having a conversation about, well, do you think we'll see the same results? And how does this compare with our population? Things like that. And that's what you write about in the narrative. And that's task 3. I'm going to skip task 4 right now, and we're going to go down here to the rubric. At the end of every evidence, there's always a rubric, and this is what I use to grade it. When I look at somebody's document, this is what I look for. So I'm going to skip down. You can compare the feedback that I give you on task 1 to this rubric. Same thing with task 2, but let's look at task 3. Okay, in task 3, when I look at this, I look for annotated bibliography that has some online tools that demonstrates that you have knowledge of instructional practices out there that would address your identified need. That's what I just told you about earlier. Have you utilized that data? Have you compared those strategies and the data that those strategies present, and kind of not did a prediction, but had a conversation about how that would impact your particular situation? That's you and your team coming together to have that conversation. You can do the research and annotated bibliography yourself. You can delegate that. That could be a leadership competency, and then pull all that information together, and then you and your team look at all that. And are there graphs? Are they visuals? I just say visuals out there to show the best practices, the impact that it's had, and visuals. Some people even do maybe a predictability model and kind of say, this is what we predict, or this is what we hope to gain by implementing this best practice, and this is what we hope to gain, and here's a graph or visual that shows that. That's good too. That's what I look for in task 3. Any questions on task 3?
Is there a video component for task 3? I know at some point we have to videotape. What's the one that we have to videotape?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question, Jennifer. And I think that's when that's task 4, when you present to your action plan to leadership. I believe you have to videotape that. Yeah, I believe that's task 3. Excuse me, task 4. Yeah. These screens here in the way. I don't think it's here. A lot of time that's the difference between 3 and 4. 2 is when you talk about it, and then you're always collecting artifacts, agendas, meetings, minutes of the meeting, notes, emails, pictures of you leading the meeting, the presentation that you use. But if you videotape it and you put the link to YouTube that you videotape it, that a lot of times that's the difference between 3 and 4. I don't think that is here. No, I don't think that's in task 3. I think that is that in the helpful hints? You're on mute there. Yeah.
Okay, I remember seeing it when I looked into, I saw something about it did not have to be videoed.
Okay.
But I emailed Dr. Church about it and he said I could go ahead and video and that was for task 2, but that I didn't have to. So I just want to see, I
Yeah.
want to know I don't want to have a meeting and not videotape it and then go back and have to try to recreate something that's not, will never be as authentic as the first time.
I got you. I got you. It will say if it's you have to videotape it, it'll say it in the rubric. Now there is later on, I think in the APTL next semester, it does have to be videotaped. But maybe what you're referring to is right here. Okay, materials and score video software.
It says in the instructions there, candidates will create a video clip of a meeting.
Mm-hmm. That will be, there we go, that will be used there. I see it right now. Yeah. You know what? I have never had that requirement cause a problem. If you don't videotape it, you've already done task 2 and you haven't videotaped it, it's fine. It's fine. So I do see that now, a video clip of a meeting that will be used not only evidence narrative, but evidence competency in Wales. I think what that's telling is if you have that video clip, that'd be a good artifact for your competency folio, and we'll talk about that when we get into task stream. Okay. But there has never been a requirement that on task 2 that I know of, and candidates who haven't done that, it's never been a problem. But later on in some of your evidence, it will say that in the rubric. If it doesn't say that in the rubric, then you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. I do have one more question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask it, but
yeah, sure.
I did have my second meeting where we just talked about the need, and I did just go ahead and set up a camera just because, but it was mostly, I have such a strong team. I have like a EC, our EC lead teacher for the county, and then our lead teacher, and they ended up I facilitated the meeting, but they ended up talking about so much, and I learned. I was the leader of the meeting, but I didn't lead the conversation. I don't know how that's seen, because to me, that shows evidence that I picked the right group.
Exactly.
That I know how to do that, but I didn't lead. I didn't talk a lot because the group.
This program is when to shut up and listen. And
okay, I just want to make sure.
If you got some strong people on the team and they're running, do is get it. And I've been guilty of this in my younger days. But the worst thing you can do is let your ego get in your way and think, well, I got to control this. I got to control the conversation. I've got to lead this. And you squelch that conversation. If you're learning and it's moving towards the goals that you want to set for that meeting, let them talk. Let them talk. You're still facilitating the meeting, and you said it yourself. I facilitated the meeting, but I didn't talk a lot. That's okay. That's fine. If they are coming up with solutions and interacting and I guess it's called synergizing now. That's one of the big words. If they're synergizing, then let them synergize.
Even on task 3, anytime is what you're saying. Okay.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. That's a great point. That is a great point. All right. So task 3. Okay, so let's move up here to task 4. So task 3 is you guys come up with a solution after looking at all the best practices. Then you say, okay, this is what we feel like is going to have a positive impact on this situation. Then you do an action plan on it. Action plans should be pretty much commonplace for you if you've been in education long enough. There's always an action plan out there. Strategic plan, your school has a strategic plan, your district has a strategic plan. Basically is, these are the strategies that these are the goals, these are the strategies that we're going to, are the objectives that we're going to implement to, accomplish these goals. This is the person responsible for it. This is the timeline of when it's going to happen. And this is how we're going to evaluate it to see whether it was a positive or negative impact. And that leads us back to establishing a new goal. That's an action plan. And that's what you're going to do in task 4. And you even see here in the descriptions, it's real short. You're going to lead the PLC and developing an action plan. Okay, now with that comes several tenets that need to be in place. First of all, you're going to do like you do everything else in the absolute. You're going to research first to show that you have knowledge of what you're getting ready to do. So you're going to research the action plan. Now, what does the research say about the action plan? What's the best action plan out there? How should it, what are some important steps that need to be included in the action plan? What should it look like? How should it be used? And so first thing you do, it doesn't have to be long, there's no sources or resources requirements on this, like there are in your PLC research and your best practices. You just have to show that you've done some research on what an action plan is and cite that reference that you use, that resource that you used, and then you go into the creation of the action plan. So the first section would be the importance of the action plan. That's research-based, so you put your research in there. And then, okay, how are you going to align it with learning outcomes? How's your action plan going to be aligned with what you want to see at the end of that action plan? So once again, basically here is that you're showing in your narrative, once again, kind of summarizing what you did in task 3, is how the best practices that your team selected will have a positive impact on that need, and what outcomes are you looking for? What learning outcomes are you looking for? So you do a narrative about that. Then you talk about your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals and objectives. This is all narrative. Basically, this is if you put your action plan on the screen in the presentation, and then you talk to the audience about what the action plan is showing them. So everything that you're writing about in your narrative will be actually at the end of it, you will have that action plan template filled out. All right, so what are the short, mid, long-term goals and objectives? What are the strategies or the specific activities? How are you going to measure the outcome? What are the indicators of success? Who's doing what? What are the classifications of role and responsibility? And at the end of it, how are you, what formative during the action plan? How are you going to do data points or benchmark checks to make sure that you're still going in the direction you want to? And what's the summative going to be? So that you need to talk to all that in your narrative, and then you show your action plan, and you just use the basic action plan template, just what I said. The goal, as a matter of fact, you can kind of do it along the same lines here. Is you have your goal up here. What are your objectives? What are your roles and responsibilities? Just, this kind of this table format, and there's many templates online about what an action plan look at, and each column, you wouldn't necessarily have the importance of an action plan as one of your columns in that table, but and not necessarily your alignment of student learning outcomes, but your activities, your indicators of success, roles and responsibilities, forming the summative assessment, that'll all be contained in the action plan, and you show the actual action plan. That'll be right before you move on to prompt 2. Any questions on prompt 1? Okay. In prompt 2, this is where you share your action plan. You and your team share your action plan with leadership. It says administration, could be your principal, could be your principal, assistant principal. Some of you, your administrative team is part of your PLC. That's fine. Then you might want to share it to the leadership team. But you need to present your action plan to leadership, to the leadership team. This is what we identified. This is what we think will help have a positive impact on that need identified, and this is a plan on how to attack it. And so you present it and you do the narrative. An artifact will be the presentation that you do, might be the PowerPoint that you do. And then at the end of that, after the presentation, part of that in that presentation should be a discussion of how are you going to build efficacy for those involved in the action plan to feel empowered and feel part of it to implement the action plan. How are you going to sustain any growth that this action plan creates? How are you going to address the diversity of the school and action plan? Is it for a specific group? If not, then how have you made allowances for the different subgroups and how they're going to be impacted by this action plan? what resources do you need about the action plan, and then you want to establish the vision of what that action plan at the end of the day, when everything's implemented, maybe 5 years from now, you may never implement this action plan by this semester. Rarely does that happen. But a lot of times after this, the principal, a lot of candidates come up with some great stuff that the school actually implements, but maybe not during this semester, and that's okay. All you're doing is presenting. There's nothing in the rubric that says that it has to be implemented. But at the end of the action plan, what's the vision? What's it going to look like? What's that need going to look like at the end of it? And that's the prompt 2 of task 4. Any questions on prompt 2? All right, so moving down to the rubric, it breaks it down for you. Here's the things that have to be contained in the action plan that you're going to do a narrative on, and then you'll have your template of the action plan. These are subheadings that need to be addressed after the action plan. That's going to occur during the presentation, the conversation that you have with your team. Here, have you demonstrated knowledge and steps in developing an action plan? That's the research that you write about at the very beginning. Do you have an understanding of systemic investigation that addresses the needs and solutions, that addresses the needs and presents solutions? And remember, always be on the lookout for any technology, always, because that's how you show the digital learning competencies. And I'll get into that later on. You don't have to do anything specific to demonstrate competencies in digital learning. That's embedded within the program. And here's an example of that. By asking you to do that in the rubric, you're automatically going to be doing that by default. So it's already digital learning competencies that are embedded throughout the program. And then, did you work with the PLC to develop the plan and articulate it to the school leadership team? And that's task 4. Any questions on 3 or 4?
Will you clarify the technologies thing again? Because the student need that we've addressed, I just want to make sure, does the action plan that we come up with, does it just need to include or mention types of technology, or I need to find a product or something that is technology to implement? Can it just have part technology and part not? I'm confused.
Yeah, great question once again. In that, when you're doing your research on best practices, you want to be on the lookout for any technology based, anything that will help students and teachers, accomplish their digital learning competencies. If your team decides on the best practice that doesn't have anything to do with technology, that's okay. That's okay. It's fine, because that's what it may not have any kind of technology based or software program or whatever. You may not be able to afford it. Now that's just part of being a principal, is what resources do we have and can we afford it? And if it does, if what your team identifies as good old school classroom management is going to solve the problem in 3rd grade reading, because your teachers don't have control of their classroom, so no learning is occurring, then that's fine. You don't go hunting for something that you don't need, but always be on the lookout. Is there some technology that can be implemented within that to satisfy that? Are we doing a disservice to our students for not looking at different ways to be innovative in the classroom? If it's there, use it and talk about it. If it's not, it's okay. You won't be penalized.
But we do need to mention that, just kind of mention things that we've looked into so that we show that we're aware of the best practices.
Yes, if there's some best practices out there that has some, like Ed Minimum, Study Island, things of that nature. I'm trying to think of one that I haven't been through the letters training, but if the letters training in elementary school, I think it has some technology basis to it. That might be something you want to look at. But yeah, if it's there, you want to talk about it. Yeah, don't ignore it. Yep. And then once again, once I read through the paper, I went through your document, if I see you're weak in that area and I'm looking for that, then I'll come back to you and we'll get together and we'll do some research together on that. Yeah. What other questions do you have? And you know, guys, I just want to tell you, I love to see the kids. I love to see little faces on the screen. I've seen 2 or 3 of them tonight, and I love that, don't it? Hey, sweetie. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Lucy.
I love it. I love it. That makes my day when that happens. So thank you for doing that. That just, that just reminds us right there is why we do what we do. Right there is why we do what we do. All right. So next time we will review anything on task 1, 2, and 3, and 4 that you need to. Task 5 is easy. Won't take any time to go over task 5. It's just a matter of talking about what you learned, and we'll talk about that later. Then we're going to dive into task stream. What is task stream? What do you do with it? The good thing about task stream is inside task stream, everything that you have to do within task stream, by the time you finish the APSL, it'll all be there. You just need to take it from the APSL and put it into task stream. And I'll show you how to do that and how to navigate that. And we'll go over task stream several times because it can be a little bit confusing when you look about accomplish some of the things you need to, but we'll go over it several times. But like I said at the very beginning, it'll be easier in 602, it'll be easier in 603, and 604, 605, you won't even need me. I will be bothering you if I even talk to you because I'll be slowing you down because you guys will be on it. Now, with that being said, I am always available, email, phone call. Once again, if you want to do a separate Zoom, if you want to do a Zoom with your peer group, I am good to do that. We just need to schedule it out to where we can make it happen. If you get stuck on something and it is bugging you, reach out to me or Dr. Church. We'll help you any way we can. Anything else for the good of the cause? Well, I hope and pray you and your family stay safe until we see each other again. I am here for you. Just reach out, and you guys just take care of yourselves and take care of your families. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.